Attention party people! You're officially invited to the Party Shop at Michael's, where you'll find hundreds of new items starting at 99 cents with an expanded selection of party wear, balloons, with helium included on select styles, decorations, and more. Michael's is your one-stop shop for celebrating everything from birthdays to bachelorette parties and baby showers to golden anniversaries. Visit Michael's in-store or Michaels.com today to supply your next party.
Bob Evans' creamy mac and cheese and buttery mashed potatoes are made for the moments you can't plan. Like last-minute school costumes, glitter explosions, or when little Liam brings 3 friends for dinner. No plan? No problem. Say hello to Plan B.O.B. from Bob Evans. Because when you bring out the Bob, you can take comfort in knowing you'll always have something delicious on the table, no matter what the day brings. When you need comfort, bring out the Bob. Available now in your refrigerated section.
Welcome to True Crime Garage. Wherever you are, whatever you are doing, thanks for listening. I'm your host, Nick, and here he is, folks, the other half of your favorite true crime power couple, the Captain.
The Lester half. It's good to be seen and good to see you. Thanks for listening. Thanks for telling a friend.
Today in the garage, we are drinking Peach Hefeweizen by the good folks at Southern Tier Brewing Company in beautiful Lakewood, New York. Peach Hefeweizen bursts with juicy peach flavor and finishes silky smooth for a taste of spring so fresh you'll want to drink it by the bushel. It's sweet, it's plump, and juicy. Garage grade 3 3/4 bottle caps out of 5. And let's give some cheers out. First up, we get a Prost from Caitlin in Ramstein, Germany.
And a big We Like You chip goes out to Kylie in Eugene, Oregon.
And here's a long distance cheers to Wendy in Hobart, Tasmania, Australia.
And a big tall cans in the air to Shane in Waverly, Ohio, which I used to play Waverly all the time at the Emmett House. Shane, maybe we've had a drink together. Who knows?
And last but certainly not least, we have a tall cans in the air. Cheers to Stefan Akenbach in Mount Pleasant, Michigan. Everybody we just mentioned went to truecrimegarage.com and helped us fill up the old garage fridge for this week's show. And for that, we thank you.
Yeah, PWRUN Beer Run. I want you to do me a favor. I want you to go to our YouTube page, True Crime Garage TV, and I want you to subscribe. And Colonel, that's enough of the business.
All right, everybody, gather around, grab a chair, grab a beer. Let's talk some true crime.
Today is a bittersweet day. Today, after decades, we are finally going to be able to tell you the identities of 2 victims back from 1997. The mother's name was Tanya. The baby's name was Tatiana. You'll get more detailed information on their identities from Captain Fitzpatrick. The reality is, our work has just begun. Knowing the identities of the mom and the little baby is just a first step to help us get to solving these murders. Having their identities helps us now say to the public, please, if you knew Tanya, if you worked with her, if you met her at the grocery store, you had an interaction with her, please contact us and let us know. Every little thing we can find out about her leading up to her death will help us to solve this horrific, horrific crime.
Most of today's information is coming from a website dedicated to several homicide victims, cases that have not been adjudicated yet, but are moving in the right direction as far as the investigation goes. Unfortunately, there are a lot of victims here, and all of them featured on this website. The website is gilgocase.com, a website dedicated to the victims and really a central location for folks who want to know more about this case, learn about the case. There's not only victim profiles and evidence information that is featured there, but also some very helpful timelines and maps as well, some visual aids if you want to learn more about this case. This is a case that we have covered many times before, but never in the manner that we are about to hear today. Today, we are going to hone in on two of the victims and examine those cases specifically. This is a case with no shortage of names: the Long Island serial killer, or L.I.S.K, also the Gilgo Beach killer, or the Gilgo Beach serial killer. And as many of you already know, they have someone in custody after many years of investigating. The man in custody is 62-year-old Rex Heuermann, who was arrested in July of 2023. And the court proceedings are dragging on, but we are nearing what should be a trial here in the coming months. This case involves multiple murders, many cases that went cold over the years, many homicide cases that started off simply as missing persons cases, and that from several jurisdictions before bodies were found off of the Ocean Parkway near Gilgo Beach. And this is Long Island, New York. While law enforcement are still connecting these unsolved homicides, victims that were killed prior to 2010 to victims that were found after, but this true crime story really kind of kicks off in May of 2010. And this is when 23-year-old Shannon Gilbert mysteriously disappeared from a gated community on the south shore of Long Island. Shannon Gilbert was working as an escort dancer at the time. At the time of her disappearance, she was working at a late night party in the Gilgo Beach area, a party that has been, you can say, well documented. At least her fleeing the home and running and knocking on doors in the neighborhood, that portion of it's well documented. Her driver for the evening, Michael Pack, he's given his side of the story. What doesn't seem to be well documented is who was all in attendance at this party that she was working the night that she disappeared.
Yeah, not only are they being secretive, but the information that they put out seems to be a lot of lies. But we were happy to announce in the garage that at least the full length of the 911 call coming from Shannon was released in its entirety.
Once that was released, we combed through it here in the garage in one of our just many episodes that we've done on this case. And in some of the portions that we've covered, it's still unclear what connection or ties they have to the overall case. And I'm talking about the Gilgo case, like the website that we just mentioned. Shannon Gilbert's disappearance ultimately led to a search that uncovered 10 bodies along a desolate beach highway. Some of these cases were linked to other sets of human remains previously found around Long Island, and several more may be connected. Due to the similarities in the victimology and in the manner in which these bodies were discarded, it was very quickly believed that several of these cases were in fact connected, possibly all of them. Now, shortly after the discovery, the general consensus seems to be that either we have one killer that was using this area, or perhaps we have two serial killers operating in the same general location and roughly in the same general time periods.
Right.
Which expands years, of course. The case made national headlines, with the media naming the perpetrator, the unknown perpetrator, the Long Island serial killer, or L.I.S.K. among the other names previously stated, but the name stuck: Long Island serial killer, or the abbreviated name of L.I.S.K. So more detail here, Captain. In December of 2010, police discovered a body near Gilgo Beach off of Ocean Parkway. This victim would be identified as 24-year-old Melissa Bartholomew. 2 days later, the bodies of 3 more women were found nearby and soon identified as Amber Lynn Costello, age 27, Megan Waterman, who was just 22 years old, and Maureen Bernard Barnes, age 25. These women are now known as the Gilgo Beach Four. And in the manner that they were found and the particulars of their disappearances has forever tied these victims together. They are all believed to have been killed and discarded by the same perpetrator.
The line of work that they were in, the fact that all of these individuals were not thriving, they were all trying to survive, and then also the area in which they were discarded.
3 months later, this brings us to March of 2011. The partial remains of a 20-year-old female victim was found. She was then identified to be Jessica Taylor. These remains were found near Gilgo Beach as well. Part of Taylor's body had actually been discovered 8 years prior and 40 miles away in Manorville, New York. Days later, 3 more sets of human remains were discovered alongside Ocean Parkway. The first was 24-year-old Valerie Mack, whose partial remains had also been found in Manorville as well years prior. With Valerie Mack, like some of these other cases, it would take a good deal of time to make a positive identification. An unidentified toddler was found near Mack's remains. Going off of memory here, Captain, if the old garage memory serves me right, I believe at the time that it was presumed that the toddler, the unidentified toddler, and the then unidentified Valerie Mack remains were a pair, potentially mother and child.
Right, because they were found so close to each other.
2 miles west of all of this, police discovered the skeletal remains of an unidentified Asian person believed to be 17 to 23 years old, later referred to as the unidentified Asian male. A week later, in April of 2011, 2 more sets of partial remains were found along Ocean Parkway. When you put them all together like that, Captain, and have to give a rundown of all of these findings, it's a lot. It's not just a lot in the way of numbers and number of victims, but a lot in the way of emotions as well. Now, there has been a lot, speaking of a lot, there has been a lot of speculation, as one would suspect. And let's say there's also been a lot of movement on the case and the investigation since the time that those bodies were being found, which started in 2010 as far as connecting the cases go. And a lot of that speculation came down to what cases and victims were actually connected. Who is responsible for their deaths, for placing their bodies where they were found? And frankly, how many monsters did we have operating undercover on Long Island, killing innocent women, a man, and a little child?
Yeah.
More recently, there has been much more movement on the case since the July 2023 arrest of Rex Heuermann,
The murderous ogre.
That's right. We've dubbed him the ogre here in the garage. If you're listening to this, I believe you have access to the internet and you can pull up pictures of this man for yourself. And I think you will quickly agree. He is not only a monster, but very much an ogre, very large man. But for nearly 30 years, Captain, the remains of one of the victims, a murdered woman, remain unidentified. But this was up until earlier this year. So let's go back to the very beginning, because there is plenty of good reason to believe that the two cases that we are going to look at under the magnifying glass today here in the garage are in fact linked to the other cases, the other victims that we just named. We're going to go all the way back to June 28th of 1997.
Yeah.
And this is when the dismembered torso of an unidentified African-American female was found in Hempstead Lake State Park in the great state of New York.
Yeah, Lakeview, New York.
So we have some hikers. They found a torso that was wrapped in a black garbage bag and crammed inside of a green Rubbermaid container in the wooded Lakeview area. The way that I understand this story to be, Captain, we have a couple folks out walking, taking in nature, enjoying the beautiful sights, getting a little exercise.
Yeah.
It's summertime.
One goes off the trail.
They spot this green tote, right? It's like this large Rubbermaid tote box. They say that there's a horrific smell coming from it. There is a lot of insect activity near this Rubbermaid container.
I believe it initially was found by just one individual. Could you imagine walking off the trail, seeing this Rubbermaid tote? And like you said, you got these insects around it. You can smell something, and not a familiar smell, not a good smell, not stopping and smelling the roses smell. And then you have to go back and tell your buddy, hey, there's something weird over here. And then he has to experience that. And then at some point you go, well, this is above my pay grade to lift up this bin, basically.
I do a good amount of walking the woods and trails, and you find an animal carcass regularly, and you do catch that smell from a distance. And because of what we do and spending so much time in this garage and talking about these cases, of course, it's on the top of my brain. Oh no, today is the day that I never wanted to experience. Thankfully, that's never happened for me. So these poor people, or this poor person that found this gruesome discovery, I couldn't imagine. What we quickly learn here is that while we have these remains, and of course we've already said dismembered torso of an unidentified female victim found inside of this Rubbermaid container, the unidentified victim's arms, head, and legs, so legs cut below the knees, were not present in this finding. They were not in the Rubbermaid container with the torso. They were not scattered around the area. They simply weren't found. What was found inside the Rubbermaid container with the torso was a red towel and a floral pillowcase. I'm a little uncertain of this particular detail here, Captain, because it's not present in most of the reports that I've seen regarding this finding.
Right.
But in some reports, it is stated, and these are reports much later, that it's stated that some jewelry, some gold jewelry
Bracelets.
bracelets and such were found with the torso. But like I said, in the original reports, none of that was mentioned. I don't know if that was going to be early holdback information. Regarding the pillowcase that was found, we said that it was of a floral design. It's very green, dark colored, with some brighter colored flowers kind of scattered about on it, red and white looking, like a red flower with the baby's breath. It's a Wamsuta Super Cow brand. The reports state 1997, but I don't know if that's because it was found with the body in 97, or if they were able to determine that it was manufactured or sold in 1997. But it was a Wamsuta Super Cow brand.
It's a little odd to me that this story wasn't covered more in 97. The victim's head's not found. Both the arms and the legs below the knees were missing.
Mm-hmm.
You would think that this would gather some more attention.
Yeah, one would hope so. Us not being from that direct area, I can't say with a great deal of certainty how much attention was given to it, but we would get some leads based off of some good work that the police are going to do and using different forms of media to get a lead. And I'm looking at a picture of the Rubbermaid container. These containers, if you have a garage or basement and you're storing things like Christmas decorations, these are great for storing books too, because they keep moisture out. While they're not airtight, they're pretty secure. But if you have a basement or garage, you know what kind of container we're talking about. These are larger containers. The one that they found had the sticker that would be on the container when you purchase it. That sticker is still present. You can see it. I think that this was called a keeper's tote or a keeper's container, and you can even see the barcode still there. But while from an investigative standpoint, here's what you're looking at. Of course, you want to identify the victim that was found. However, somebody has gone to great lengths and measures so that you would not, or make that very difficult at the very least. But you're also going to, like in so many other cases that we've talked about, you're going to use the other items that were found with the victim, the container included in that, as possible identifiers or a way to at least hone in on a specific area or time frame regarding your victim. All this could potentially help lead you to learning who the victim is. And you do not have, in most cases, you do not have a suspect pool until you know the identity of the victim. So that is step number one, and that is going to be the most important part of your investigation.
Well, the fact that the victim is found in this rubber container and wrapped in a towel, wrapped in a pillowcase, then that's probably going to make it harder to figure out when they were discarded there. But also you'd think, well, Rubbermaid just makes probably a couple different versions of these bins. So that's going to be hard to figure out if this one is unique at all. But they are able to find out it's somewhat unique as far as they know when it was manufactured and when they stopped manufacturing it.
Yeah. And as said, I don't have the exact number on me, but there were thousands of this particular container that were made. The victim, as we said, was found in a green plastic container dumped next to a road is the short version that you get. The long version you get is located approximately 200 yards north of Peninsula Boulevard on the west side of Lake Drive. The victim had a tattoo of a heart-shaped peach with a bite out of it on her left breast. Thus, she was given the nickname of Peaches when they could not identify the victim. Later, also the name of Jane Doe number 3 would be applied to her, and we'll get into how that came to be as well. Police estimated that she had died less than 3 days before being discovered. Here is the report that went out at the time in hopes of identifying the victim. So this is the information that they put out to the masses in hopes that somebody will come forward. And they simply state, we found an unidentified female located on June 28, 1997 in Lakeview, Nassau County, New York. Estimated date of death, no more than 3 days. And in fact, I saw some of the reports here, Captain, where they were telling the public no more than 3 days, less than a week, or 36 hours, at least 36 hours, but no more than a week. Cause of death, homicide. Estimated age of the victim, suspected to be 16 to up to 30 years of age. Approximate height and weight unknown for obvious reasons. Scars and marks, identifiers on the person. She had an abdominal scar, possibly from a cesarean section, and a distinctive tattoo of a peach in the shape of a heart with a bite taken out of it and 2 drips falling from its core. This located on her left breast, and it was noted that the tattoo was approximately 2 inches in size.
Well, there's your identifier, and like I
Yep.
said, I don't think this got a lot of national attention, but I'm sure it got some local attention. So then you have this killer out there going, well, I murdered this victim. I disposed of them, probably not in the manner in which he wanted to, but he obviously, because basically a severed torso, no head, no arms, no legs. So the killer put in some effort, but within 3 days, possibly, of discarding the victim, then this hits the news. This probably had the killer sweating a little bit.
One would hope so. And like you said, it's obvious that while he may not have wanted her to ever be found, all of his effort went way more into the idea that she would not be identified if she was found.
Yeah, and I think the problem is it's hard to learn much about how they discard a victim in the sense of, well, we don't know if he was interrupted. And so if he was interrupted, did that change his plans on how he was going to discard this victim? Because I believe there was a body of water that was somewhat close. So you just wonder what the mind frame is of this killer at the time. But I think it's hard to say because I think in these locations that seem to be pretty remote, once you see headlights coming at you, you might alter your plan.
The other thing of this too is my guess is this being a park, what did we say, a state park, and it being surrounded by some heavily populated areas. This wasn't the first body that was found in this park. And maybe he had read that in the newspaper even decades prior, or seen something on the news and thought, well, if somebody else dumped a body there or others have, this might be, in a weird way, it's a suggestion, right, to the killer.
Right.
After finding the woman's torso in 1997, her distinctive peach tattoo was distributed widely in hopes that someone would recognize it. To the specifics of that, I go to a July 3rd, 1997 Daily News article that was titled "Grizzly Find Puzzles Cops." And it reads, Nassau County detectives are hoping that a chest tattoo of a peach will help them identify the headless, naked torso of a woman found in a state park. Police think the tattoo artist or someone close to the mutilation victim will recognize the design and step forward to identify the woman whose partial remains were found in Hempstead Lake State Park by a hiker. The woman's head, arms, and legs below her knees had been hacked off and have not been recovered. Quote, we've shown photos of the tattoo to tattoo artists in Nassau County, and they've told us whoever made it should be able to recognize their own work, end quote. That was a police source that had said that to the newspaper. The victim was an African-American woman with a medium build between 18 and 30, according to this article. We said 16 and 30 earlier. The peach tattoo is above the woman's left breast. The body also has a scar from a cesarean section on the abdomen. Cops believe the victim had been dead for more than 36 hours and less than a week.
This message is sponsored by Greenlight. In every crime we cover, money is an invisible thread. Sometimes the motive, the trigger, or even the desperation that pushes someone over the edge. Financial stress can turn ordinary people into criminals, and a lack of financial literacy makes victims more vulnerable. That's why teaching our kids about money isn't just smart, it's essential. Greenlight is a debit card and money app for families. It's a safe way to teach kids and teens about money, preparing them for bigger financial decisions later. Give your kids a financial education many of us didn't get. Join millions of parents already using Greenlight, the #1 family finance and safety app. I love Greenlight. My family loves Greenlight. My favorite thing about it is my nieces and nephews can come over, do some chores for their fun uncle, and I can pay them directly through Greenlight. It's the financial education I didn't get growing up. It would have taught me some discipline and a better understanding of money. It's something I wish they taught through schools, but they don't. So give your kids and your family members the tools they need with Greenlight. Start a risk-free Greenlight trial today at greenlight.com/garage. That's greenlight.com/garage to get started. Greenlight.com/garage. Check out greenlight.com/garage today.
Have you had that moment where your kid asks for help with homework and you're like, I haven't done this since middle school? Or maybe your child's ahead of the curve and getting bored in class. Whether your kid is struggling or soaring, IXL can make a real difference. IXL is an award-winning online learning platform that helps kids really understand what they're learning. It covers math, language arts, science, and social studies, from pre-K all the way through 12th grade. It's designed to be engaging, personalized, and yes, actually fun, with encouraging feedback that keeps kids motivated. Don't miss out. IXL is used in 96 of the top 100 school districts in the U.S. 1 in 4 students in the U.S. are learning with IXL. I have friends and family that have used IXL for years. It's great for the summer months when there's no classes, so you can stay on track. And it's even better when there are classes, trying to get ahead. Or maybe your kid needs help studying for tests. Most kids need help in specific areas. I know that I did. And IXL is a great way to keep your kids on track or to get ahead. Make an impact on your child's learning and get IXL now. And True Crime Garage listeners can get an exclusive 20% off IXL membership when they sign up today at IXL.com/garage. Visit IXL.com/garage to get the most effective learning program out there at the best price. If you're still overpaying for wireless, it's time to say yes to saying no. At Mint Mobile, their favorite word is no. No contracts, no monthly bills, no overages, no hidden fees, no BS. Plans start at $15 a month at Mint. All plans come with high-speed data and unlimited talk and text, delivered on the nation's largest 5G network. Use your own phone with any Mint Mobile plan and bring your phone number along with all your existing contacts. It's just that easy. Start saving money and get the same great quality wireless service that you are used to with Mint Mobile. People are saving $40, $50, $60 a month with Mint Mobile and getting the same great service. Ready to say yes to saying no? Make the switch at mintmobile.com/TCG. That's mintmobile.com/TCG. Upfront payment of $45 required, equivalent to $15 a month. Limited time, new customer offer for first 3 months only. Speeds may slow above 35 gigabytes on unlimited plan. Taxes and fees extra. See Mint Mobile for details. Fall is my favorite time of year. I love early fall when you have the warm days and the cool nights. And where I live, the leaves have already started to fall to the ground. As the weather cools, it's time to swap in the pieces that actually get the job done. Warm, durable, and built to last. I'm talking about great quality clothing from Quince. Quince delivers every time with wardrobe staples that'll carry you through the season. Quince has the kind of fall staples you'll actually want to wear on repeat, like 100% Mongolian cashmere from just $60. Classic fit denim and real leather and wool outerwear that looks sharp and holds up. By partnering directly with ethical factories and top artisans, Quince cuts out the middleman to deliver premium quality at half the cost of similar brands. I love Quince. I've been telling you about them for years. It's my go-to. I fill up my closet with Quince. I fill up my dresser drawers with Quince. This year, checking out the fall lineup, I love the double brushed stretch overshirt jacket, and the Mongolian cashmere button-down sweater looks absolutely amazing. If you see me out and I'm looking great, you know I'm wearing Quince. Layer up this fall with pieces that feel as good as they look. Go to quince.com/garage for free shipping on your order and 365-day returns. That's QUINCE.com/garage. Free shipping and 365-day returns. Quince.com/garage.
All right, we are back. Cheers, mates. Tall cans in the air.
Way
Cheers
up
to
there
you,
in the
Colonel.
air. Way up there in the air, yes. Cheers to you, Captain. Cheers to all the good people in listener land. I love what the police decided to do here. This was very smart. So they put this information into a tattoo magazine, right? Makes a lot of sense. We can already see the groundwork that they're doing within their own county. They go around to different tattoo artists in that county, and they're asking them, have you made this? Did you make this? Is this your artwork? Do you remember putting this on anyone? And the information they're getting from those tattoo artists is great information for police. While it doesn't tell you anything, who the artist was or who the victim was, you're hearing from these artists that, no, this is unique enough that whoever created this, if it's somewhat recent within the last several years or what have you, they should be able to recognize and remember doing this work. So what you're learning when you hear that from different artists in your county, it's telling you, well, we've talked to every artist that's still licensed or still operating today.
Right.
And this didn't come from our county.
Well, and that makes sense to me because especially at that time period in the late 90s, it was very common for people to go on a trip. We're going to go to Panama Beach and we're going to get a tattoo while we're there, or we're going to, and especially a tattoo like this, and also an individual that doesn't have a lot of tattoos. So it wouldn't be like, a lot of people that have multiple tattoos are going back to the same artist over and over.
I have multiple tattoos of the Rolling Stones lips logo all over my ass from a Fort Lauderdale trip that I took a while ago. Last week.
You should see them.
Yeah, I can't. Because
hey, we'll post those on our social media.
That's right. So I have a snippet from the tattoo magazine. It very clearly shows the tattoo as pictured on the victim's body. And underneath it says, it looks like this was part of a larger article, but the portion I have says Crime Stoppers is offering a reward of up to $1,000 for information leading to the arrest of the person or persons responsible who committed this crime. So they've already probably described the murder or described the finding the victim.
Right.
And it gives a 1-800-TIPS line to call and says that all calls are anonymous. You don't have to reveal your identity to help solve this crime. But it works, right? Casting a wide net usually works. And here it does as well. So then we get a tattoo artist in the state of Connecticut who comes forward. He says that he believes that he is the one who gave the tattoo to the unidentified woman. The tattoo artist claimed that the woman was about 18 or 19 at the time that he said that he did the work. So this is a good lead, right? They got the lead because of a picture of the tattoo was featured in a national tattoo magazine. It was Connecticut tattoo artist Stephen Cullen that recognized it and claimed he gave the tattoo to a woman in the year of 1996. So the year prior to the body being found, saying that she came in with two other women when she got the tattoo, who, going off of memory, he says he believed they were said to be her aunt and cousin. She also said that she was from either the Bronx area or the Long Island area, and that she came to Connecticut because she was having some troubles with her boyfriend. Pretty descriptive lead there. Despite this lead, no other person came forward to identify the torso, and no other information was gleaned from this tip. The victim remained unidentified, and investigators continued to use her nickname of Peaches.
And law enforcement wasn't able to look up missing person cases in those areas that matched her description, because it seems like nobody made a report that she was missing.
Yes, that seems to hold true. The other thing, too, is the reason why you like this lead is because, as you know, and with my Rolling Stones tattoos, oftentimes these tattoos can also be very personal. And given the location of this tattoo on her body, you, as a detective, you're wondering, well, how many people would know about this tattoo? But the lead you're getting is telling you that she came in with 2 other people. You just really hope that there would have been a missing persons report that they could have connected this to at that time. And obviously that's not the case.
And it could be her first tattoo. So people love to show off their tattoo. It doesn't matter where it's at. I mean, I can't stop you. I mean, you've had these tattoos for years, and I can't stop you from pulling down your pants and showing me those big old lips.
In 2007, there's a possible new lead here in this case, but it's not the good kind. This comes in the way of another victim that could potentially be tied to this victim in some form or fashion. So this comes about on March 3rd, 2007, when a suitcase containing a dismembered female torso with a similar tattoo design was found in Harbor Island Park in New York. The similarities raised the possibility of a possible connection between the victims. The victim, this time described as possibly a Hispanic or light-skinned African American. This is a female victim. A stab wound was noted to the torso. One of her dismembered legs washed up at Cold Spring Harbor on March 21st, 2007. So just a few weeks later, and her other leg washed up at Oyster Bay in the village of Cove Neck the following day. The victim this time had a tattoo of 2 cherries on her right breast. And she is referred to as Cherries by investigators. She is estimated to be 5'4" to 5'6" tall and approximately 160 to 200 pounds in weight. This finding is almost 10 years later.
Right.
And it's after this, another horrific finding in 2007 of the victim referred to as Cherries, that we have to fast forward all the way to 2011. Remember, we were already talked about the victims being found in December of 2010, but they would continue to search that general area and unfortunately continue to find things scattered in that general area in the weeks and months to come. So let's go to April 4th, 2011, when we have an unidentified toddler that was found along Ocean Parkway at Gilgo Beach. The gender of the child was undetermined, but believed to be female. I've come across this in some of the other cases that we've talked about. When you have the younger victims and there's a good deal of decomposition, or you're only finding skeletal remains or partial remains, that because of the body being, it's not developed, that it gets very difficult to determine the gender, the sex of the remains that are found. So this victim is referred to as Baby Doe, or in some cases, the toddler. Police estimated her age to be approximately 2 years old. She was found wrapped in a blanket with no apparent signs of trauma. So found along Ocean Parkway. Now, this is where police had recently discovered murder victims Melissa Bartholomew, Megan Waterman, Amber Lynn Costello, and Maureen Bernade Barnes the previous December. So this is, you have this horrible case on Gilgo Beach, and now you're finding a child victim that you have to think or believe, just given the proximity, is probably connected to your Gilgo 4 case.
Right.
And then, as we mentioned earlier, there was similar jewelry that's found with this Baby Doe that you found with your Peaches victim, your still unidentified Peaches victim.
What do you make of the discarding of the victims and how the Gilgo 4 are like a cluster? Do you have any thoughts?
Yeah, so I think that often what we have here is that the killers will operate in a area that they're comfortable with. And oftentimes that will be referred to as their comfort zone. And that could mean a couple of different things. Like, where do they find their victims? They find them in their comfort zone. Where do they kill the victims? In their comfort zone. Where do they discard of the victims? In their comfort zone. And it doesn't have to be all three done in that area. But what it appears to me with these victims being found so close together, the Gilgo Four, and found very much in the same way with burlap bags, and there was some bindings, and they're placed off of the road, but in some very heavy brush. And what we do know that did work for the killer was that they weren't found for a considerable amount of time. And I think what we have here, let's pretend for a moment that our unidentified Peach's victim that was found in a very different manner, right? Just simply placed in a state park in a large storage container, compared to burlap bags and heavy brush kind of out in the middle of nowhere. I think that you're seeing a couple things. If it is connected, it goes back to what you had said. Oh shit, 3 days later, that thing that I placed, the item that I placed in the state park has now been located, has been found. Right. And there is an identifier on this victim, because what do we know that the killer did? We can surmise that he went to the efforts to make sure that she would not be identified because of the removal of the hands and the head.
But he left an identifier by the tattoos. And so if you connect these to Rex Heuermann, he eventually has this documentation that says, well, you got to make sure that you distort and destroy these markers of identification. And so I almost think that you can hypothesize that Rex is responsible for Peaches and possibly Cherry's, because similar victimology, so similar way that he discarded the victims. And I think maybe he learned something in the idea of, well, if I wrap the victim in burlap, which is more of a natural material, that they'll be less likely to, well, they'll break down faster, but also when you're out in the woods, a big plastic tub or a luggage bag sticks out like a sore thumb.
Yes, and the nature of that container would be likely to preserve what's inside as well. So you're right. And we can see that too. We can directly tie some evidence found inside of his home later, much later, that appears what he was doing. Like you said, he's learning, he's educating himself, and some of this is coming by way of trial and error. But referring back to our Blueprint for Murder episodes, where we went through the findings in his home, in the computer, and it appears that he was, as cryptic as they may be, was taking notes, almost setting reminders of, hey, last time this didn't work out so well for me, but this did. So keep doing this part of it, but let's stop doing that part of it. He was working to get better. This again this is a slap in the face of the old serial killer myth that they all deep down inside, they all want to get caught. There might be a few that want to get caught. But when you see somebody learning and trying to perfect the way and that the bodies would not be located, that's every indication that this guy has no desire to get caught. In fact, he has every desire to make sure he can stay free so he can continue doing what he loves to do. And that, unfortunately, is to kill young, petite women.
Well, we've heard from a lot of serial killers that after the kill, there's a time period where they, like, paranoia sets in because the cops are going to, come get me right away. And so it's something that I'm sure that these killers think often about. And like you said, some of them maybe will, I think maybe it's just something that, I got caught. So then I tell you, oh, well, I'm actually smarter than you guys. I wanted to get caught. Sure you did. You wanted all your freedoms to be taken away. But my question, if I'm studying these individuals, is when you're processing this idea of I could get caught one day, was there any thought of how you would handle that? We have some killers that when they're caught, they will not confess to any crimes. They will claim they're innocent no matter
Like Rex
what
Heuermann.
evidence. Right. And then we have other ones that once they get caught, it's almost like they're like, okay, the game's over. Let me tell you all about my statistics.
It gets no. I think you're spot on. I think a lot of them do the more organized type. I think they do think about that, and I think they do take that into consideration.
Right.
I also think that just the more organized ones seem to study other serial killers, and so in that study, what you're going to find is killers that were caught, identified, and convicted, and then killers that were never identified and still remain a mystery till this day. So when you're studying that, part of it is, like you said, these guys got caught. Well, how did they handle it? What did they choose to do? And it's also what motivating factors, where we can look at this and boil it down to its simplest form and say whoever's doing this very likely is doing it because they are a sexual sadist.
Right.
But I also am of the belief, and I think you are as well, that there's a lot of motivating factors in this. Some of it is ego. We see that with somebody like BTK. I think that Heuermann has that in him where he wants credit for these,
Yes.
but I don't think I think he's happy to not be the one to stand up, raise his hand and say, I did this. Give me the credit. I'm some genius serial killer. I do think he has some egg on his face because he was caught. Who knows how he will behave? What I would be interested to see, Captain, is does his behavior change
with a conviction
when he's convicted?
Because it could be at that point the game is over, and now I will tell you about my masterpiece in their sick, twisted ogre brains. But hey,
Right.
I speak for all the listeners. Stop agreeing with me on a lot of stuff. You're being too nice lately.
Agreed.
Agree.
There's a lot that happens, some behind the scenes and some right in front of us, regarding this Peaches victim between the time that the torso's found in 97 and then we have the identification made and announced earlier this year. That's a long time that's gone by. Now, during the course of that, we talked about the additional human remains, the toddler being found in 2011, but there were also additional human remains that were discovered in a plastic bag on Jones Beach, at Jones Beach State Park. And this is to put it short, it's Peach's torso's extremities. And they're found about 15 miles apart from where the toddler was found. It's my understanding here, Captain. This is why I think the jewelry portion of this is a little confusing. But I think it was only when this portion of remains were discovered that the jewelry was discovered. They figure out using DNA that the additional human remains belong to the torso. Unfortunately, the head is never found. What we then learn...
We really do talk about some sick shit in this garage.
This is terrible. They should burn the garage to the ground. In September of 2011, at a press conference, investigators displayed images of that jewelry that we talked about, believed to belong to some of the victims. Among the items was a rope necklace and a pair of hoop earrings, which were likely worn by the toddler whose remains were found. There were 2 bracelets recovered with the child's remains that are believed to have belonged to her mother. So one bracelet featured an X and an O patterns adorned with stones resembling diamonds, while the other was a snake-style chain.
Were they ever able to figure out anything from this? Because these were pretty generic designs.
Oh, yeah. I don't think so. This doesn't appear to be what led them to the identification. So what we learned is DNA analysis confirmed that the torso found in 1997 and the remains found in 2011 were from the same individual. It was also confirmed that the woman known as Peaches was the mother of the child found in 2011. So it's taking a long time here, right? But you are starting to connect the dots. You're starting to connect the victims, and while you do not know the mother and child's name at this time, you are learning more about them, the jewelry and such.
Yeah, but 14 years later.
Exactly. Well, and some of that information is coming up in 2016. What was not known to the general public was it appears that they had not 100%, but very close to it, had believed that they had identified Peaches way back in 2022. Okay, so this is how this works out. In October of 2022, we get several law enforcement agencies that are announcing through Facebook, through other forms of media, that they were looking for relatives of Elijah Howell/Howard, who lived from 1927 to 1963, stating that this Elijah lived in Mobile, Alabama with his wife, Carrie. He had died in 1963. They were hoping that friends and relatives of this Elijah could help identify Peaches and her child. So when you're specifically looking for a deceased individual, like people that knew this deceased individual and relatives of this deceased individual, that's telling me that you've pretty much narrowed it down to who Peaches is, either to an actual individual or to a small group of persons. So Elijah was also known by the surnames of Howell and Howard and was born in Frankville, Alabama. He spent the majority of his adult life in Pritchard, Alabama. By 1950, Elijah was living with his wife, Carrie. During the 1960s, his residence was listed as 616 Garrison Avenue. At the time of his death in 1963, he was employed as a construction worker with the Sullivan Concrete Company. On October 31st, 1963, Elijah and a neighbor were found deceased in a car off of Highway 45 near Atmore Street in Mobile, Alabama. The cause of death was determined to be the combined effects of alcohol and carbon monoxide poisoning. According to records, Elijah's mother, Luana, and his brother, Sid, still resided in the state of Alabama. And so they're saying anyone with information about this Elijah guy is urged to contact the FBI or submit a tip online on the FBI's official website. As we mentioned, in July of 2023, a suspect was arrested in connection with the Gilgo Beach serial killings. While not directly charged in Peach's case, the investigation into her murder remained active. And of course, there were a lot of people,
right,
yours truly included, that suspected that the Peaches case is probably connected to some of these other victims.
Well, and we also have Google search data from Rex Heuermann, and he was, and I don't know if they put it at the time, back in 1997, but he was basically searching for, like, it would say like a African-American sex slave, like weird porn searches.
It was this year, 2025, April 23rd, that police in Nassau County, New York, announced that the remains of Jane Doe, previously known as Peaches, and Jane Doe number 3. So I want to break this down because there is a little bit of confusion out there because the unidentified victim was given 2 different names. The torso was nicknamed Peaches. It was the other additional remains that were located later and far away that to be Jane Doe number 3. And then eventually they figure out Jane Doe number 3 and Peaches are one and the same. It was this year that they formally identified or announced the identification of Peaches as that of 26-year-old U.S. Army veteran Tanya Denise Jackson. And Baby Doe, as we said, or the toddler, was her child. So what we learned here at the official press conference was that Peaches and her daughter identified as Tanya Denise Jackson, the mother, and 2-year-old Tatiana Marie Dykes. Tanya was born in October of 1970 in the state of Alabama. That makes sense why they were looking in Alabama for the Elijah person. This is somebody that they absolutely believed was related to Tanya Denise Jackson. So they're doing that prior to making this announcement to the world, which actually took place 2 or 3 years later, that they had narrowed it down pretty well, is my guess. And then it's the following year that they find relatives, and then they have to work through the process of comparing the DNA to confirm that their unidentified is a relative of these folks. Then they also have to identify the daughter. We have some information on her. She was a U.S. Army veteran, served from 1993 to 1995. She was living in Brooklyn in 1997. Tatiana's father has been identified through birth records as a one Andrew Dykes, originally from Florida. Dykes moved away from Brooklyn in May of 2000. He's been questioned many times by detectives, and Nassau County has said openly multiple times that this guy has been very cooperative and was cooperating in the investigation. They gave more information about her too. Her vehicle, a black Geo. They gave information that they believe that she was working as a medical assistant, maybe part-time at the time that she was killed in 97. And that it sounds like her and the father had been split up for some time.
But it's probably very hard for law enforcement to clear the father because so much time has passed. So for him to present an alibi with some solid evidence would have been pretty difficult.
Yeah, and while I say that he's been cooperative, I've also not seen anything that says outwardly that he's been cleared. But what we also know is that Rex Heuermann, who's been arrested and charged with the Gilgo 4 murders, he's not been charged with the murder of Peaches. So she had been estranged from her family for much of her adult life. She served in the U.S. Army, as we said, living on 3 different Army bases in Texas, Georgia, and Missouri, and she drove a black 1991 Geo Storm. The Geo Storm is quite interesting to this case because this Geo Storm was found, but it was never connected to the case because your victim was unidentified for so very long.
Right.
It's believed that that the killer would have had to. So it sounds like she was working in some kind of part-time capacity as a sex worker at the time, or in some form of that. That's not been confirmed across the board, but that is something that's been openly discussed. The thinking here, Captain, is that for some reason she was unable to secure a babysitter, and that her and the toddler arrived at a prearranged meeting together, and her killer unexpectedly finds the toddler at some point.
Right.
And that she would have drove her black 1991 Geo Storm to this meeting. And if she did in fact do that, then it's believed that the killer at a later time moved it or forced her to move it to where it was eventually found.
One of the saddest thing about the Peaches case is that nobody reported her missing or reported her daughter missing. It's sad to think that there's somebody out in this world that people, I guess they just didn't value her. I don't know. Doesn't make any sense. Or you could, I guess, maybe make the argument that a lot of her connections were states away, so maybe they didn't even know.
Yes, they were several states away, and as said, she was estranged from her family for most of her adult life, and so they probably didn't keep in touch. And we already know that she's moving around considerably for several years with her time in the Army, and she served in the Gulf War. She was a private first class in the U.S. Army and served in the Gulf War. Tanya gave birth to her daughter Tatiana in 1995 and had two addresses in Brooklyn, New York: 54th Street in Red Hook, Brooklyn, and Sterling Place in Bed-Stuy in Brooklyn. She also had P.O. boxes in Brooklyn and in Maplewood, New Jersey. And the authorities go on to say, while we do not yet know the circumstances of their murders, we do know that Tanya and Tatiana have, like all of the girls, captured our attention and our empathy. It is a blessing to know that authorities have not given up on any of these victims. And they also note that Othram, the great Othram down in the great state of Texas, was a partner in building the DNA profiles for both Tanya and Tatiana.
So then I guess now the challenge for law enforcement is to figure out if these are connected to the Gilgo 4 and if they're connected to Rex Heuermann.
Yeah, that is where it stands with Peaches and her daughter Tanya and Tatiana today. Where it stands with Rex Heuermann, for those that don't know, just a quick overview. He's a New York architect and the suspect in the notorious Gilgo Beach serial killings. He managed to evade capture for quite some time, well over a decade. He was arrested in July of 2023. For those that have followed the case, you'll remember that he was initially only charged with 3 of the homicides, and over in 2024, that increased from 3 up to 7. So as of this date, he's being charged with the murder of 7 women. One of those, the Valerie Mack one, I believe it is, Captain, or the Jessica Taylor, pardon me. One of those, he's only charged with second degree murder in those cases. But as said, he's an architect. Was also a family man. Currently 62 years old. He worked in Midtown Manhattan, lived in Massapequa Park, Long Island, with his wife and children. Neighbors described him as unremarkable other than his size. I think there was some weird story of him getting into it with some neighbor from down the street. I don't know the particulars of that, but ultimately he would be charged in all 4 of the murders of the Gilgo 4. And the evidence that led investigators to him was identifying a dark green Chevrolet Avalanche that was registered to him that matched witnesses' descriptions from one of the victims' disappearances. And further, that investigation linked him to the case through burner phones and then advanced DNA analysis. And if you follow the case, everybody knows about the famous discarded pizza crust that they used in this case.
And then also the digital data.
Oh yeah, the digital forensic findings on his computer have been well documented, especially by us here in the garage in our Blueprint for Murder episodes. Since his arrest, his wife Asa has filed for divorce. However, it is reported that they do remain in some kind of contact. The divorce settlement was reached earlier this year, and the authorities in Suffolk County, so he's being kept in custody up until his trial at the Riverhead Correctional Facility in Suffolk County. And there they're saying that he is compliant, he's polite, and seems to be adapting well to jail life. More recently here, Captain, in just last month, in September, a judge ruled that the DNA evidence collected using the whole genome sequencing technology is admissible at Heuermann's trial. This was a major blow to the defense, which sought to have the high-tech evidence thrown out of court. And this, I think this was great too. And we touched on this prior to our conversation here today, but the judge also denied the defense's request to sever the 7 murder cases, right? So the defense wanted to say, well, he's got to stand trial for each one of these murders that he's being charged with in a separate trial. The judge denies this, ruling that we're going to try all these together, which is considered a big win for the prosecution because what the jury is going to be faced with now, rather than looking at each case. And all right, in his defense, I hate to be one coming to Rex Heuermann's defense, but in his defense,
thanks a lot, asshole.
Yeah, what a jerk. What a jerk. Kick me out of he's just been voted off the island.
You did, you little jerk.
You've been voted off the island there, Colonel.
Nick will not be back with us next week.
But if you look at some of these cases individually, you wouldn't go, wow, there's a mountain of damning evidence against this guy. But when you throw all the cases together, you see it. And I think you see it very clearly. This guy looks to be very guilty. He is the ogre monster that we described him to be. And where it stands now, and of course, this is a high-profile case, but Rex Heuermann's next scheduled to appear in court on January 13th, 2026, and the trial is expected to begin sometime next year. And until then, Rex Heuermann has pled not guilty to all of the charges.
I want to thank everybody for joining us here in the garage each and every week. Thanks for telling your mother. Thanks for telling your brother. And we are excited to announce the new Halloween 2025 t-shirts and hoodies are here. They're available at truecrimegarage.com. They look great. Treat yourself.
They do look great. Very seasonal, very Halloween. And here's the deal. Where our garage is positioned, parts unknown, but I can tell you this. While it remains bright, sunny, and warm during the daytime, last night dipped down into the 50s. It's getting to be hoodie weather very quickly. So go get you some for this year's Halloween and save it because you can wear it again for all of the wonderful Halloween festivities to come in years ahead.
So go to the website and treat yourself. We're going to treat ourselves to a delicious beverage. And until next week,
be good, be kind, and don't litter.
A KFC tale in the pursuit of flavor. If the Colonel could read all your internet comments over the last few years, he'd say, people sure love my sweet, smoky KFC original honey barbecue, and it's time we bring it back so they can put that bold, tangy sauce on their favorite orders. He'd also say, thanks for calling my chicken goated, bussin', and low-key fire, bro. The Colonel lived so we could chicken. Back because you begged for it. KFC original honey barbecue.
Prices and participation may vary while supplies last.